Republicans in Colorado have won a huge victory, getting Democrats to compromise on property taxes out of fear that voters might side with the GOP in November.
You know, Marshall, I have no idea, and nor do you, nor do any of us what voters are going to do, right?
Denver Public Schools tweaks its discipline guidelines, but will still allow students charged with attempted murder to come back to class. He went from prison to corporate leadership and realized he needed to help other Coloradans move past the worst in their lives.
It really made me rethink everything that I was doing in my life.
And this landscaping is a choice. The city says it'll pay off with time.
We can have little bits of wilderness in our urban environments.
That's tonight on Next. It's the biggest win for Colorado Republicans in years. They don't have the votes to do anything at the state capitol, but the Democrats in charge there so feared the conservative property tax cuts would win on the ballot in November, they're bringing everybody back to the Capitol to strike a deal and take those issues off the ballot. Politics guy Marshall Zellinger is here to explain this, and it's a pretty big victory for a small minority of Republicans at the Capitol.
Because Republicans know how to get things on the ballot, and that's where this comes into play. Two Republican-backed ballot issues promise greatly reduce property tax increases, but at the expense of local government funding and the state budget. Let me cut to, is it a good precedent to call a special session because you're concerned voters might say yes to a ballot issue that you don't want them to say yes to?
Well, it's always good when we can find a way forward that has more buy-in, broader buy-in, that Republicans and Democrats can agree on rather than have a divisive or risky set of initiatives.
With this executive order, Democratic Governor Jared Polis called the legislature back to work for later this month. The special session will attempt to limit property tax increases even more and cap future property tax increases a little more, something lawmakers thought they did earlier this year, just not enough to avoid two ballot issues that promise more property tax savings.
If you have a solution now in the special session that could have existed in the legislative session, was that a failure of leadership to not get it?
It could have. Yeah, it could have. I hoped it would. I mean, it was close, right? I don't think it's a matter of playing the blame game. It's really a matter of saying, I'm just glad that, you know, while there weren't discussions for a while and both sides went to their corners, that people came back together and hopefully worked it out.
We've always said if the legislature goes and does this, we might get 2/3 of what we want, but, you know, that's what compromise is. And
Michael Fields is a familiar face. He is not elected, but often gets conservative policy issues on the ballot. His two property tax ballot issues would save property owners more than the legislature has done, but it would also limit local government funding and perhaps school funding that the state might not fully cover. The threat that voters might support that brings us to this special session, where those ballot issues would go away if lawmakers provide additional relief and caps on future property tax increases.
we are not planning on bringing future measures forward unless the legislature goes back on this deal.
Is Michael Fields the most powerful Republican in Colorado?
No, I mean, I don't think, again, this is not him as a Republican. What has power is that hundreds of thousands of Coloradans have put their name and signed a ballot initiative to put it on the ballot.
We agree that the people are the most powerful thing in the system, whether they're electing officials or running ballot measures in order to do that. So, yeah, we agree.
Let's be clear. No matter what happens at the legislature, your property tax bill is not going to go down. Again, it's minimizing the increase. Your property tax is here, maybe it's going to go up to here, but now it's really going to go there. So just be clear, it's still going to go up. You might be asking, why would Michael Fields pull these ballot issues if clearly the special session is like, whoa, they're going to pass, so we better get that, like, that's the idea.
Why wouldn't he want the whole thing?
Right. It's a lot of money to run ballot issues, and you're concerned that maybe the opposition will spend a lot of money telling voters to say no to it. So this is that compromise. Hey, we're going to get some of what we want. Good enough for me.
So what keeps the people that Michael Fields represents, which are the wealthiest people in the state, from coming back next year and being like, you know how we shook you down last year? Now let's shake you down for even more.
Trust. I don't believe there's any like written legal document, but it's trust that even in this interview, Michael Fields said as long as lawmakers don't go back on this, meaning like start to tweak up some of these numbers in future legislatures, they'll stand back and just watch the numbers be what they are.
All right, special session. Your plans are made. Enjoy that. Marshall Zellinger, thank you. Denver Public Schools is out with its new discipline matrix today, and those guidelines still allow for students charged with violent crimes off campus, including attempted murder, to return to class. DPS got pressure from parents after 2 shootings at East High School in 2023, followed by a whistleblower telling Next that there were school leaders in the district uncomfortable with DPS leadership overruling their wishes and the recommendation of law enforcement to put potentially violent students back in class. Former Colliff principal Kurt Dennis was then fired by DPS. He's suing. So here's how the DPS policy of welcoming back students charged with violent crimes was explained at the time by then board member Ayante Anderson on Next.
We're not in the practice of dismissing students because they've made mistakes.
What if the mistake is shooting somebody and getting charged with attempted murder?
You know, I think that's an opportunity for us as a district to make sure that we have a robust safety plan with those students and that family and those impacted. But I can't say that I believe the expulsion of a student is what we should be doing, or the denying them a free and fair public education, especially because some of these instances that we're talking about are happening outside of our jurisdiction as a school district.
DPS said today that the adjustments made to the discipline matrix will provide more clarity for both administrators and the people impacted by their choices. I-70 is back open in Wheat Ridge after a terrible crash killed 3 people this morning. A semi-truck spilled a load of pipes, which hit several cars. 3 people in the same car died. 2 went to the hospital. We looked into the trucking company involved in this crash. Semi is owned by a large company out of Wisconsin called Rail Transport. Federal records show the company has a satisfactory record for safety. The last deadly crash it was involved in was last year in Indiana. Kelly Loving was one of 5 people killed inside Club Q in 2022. An advocacy group wants her name to be remembered through a trans Bill of Rights for Coloradans. The Kelly Loving Bill of Rights would offer more resources and protections to the trans community. Her family says she fought for those things. The Bread and Roses Legal Group is surveying the trans community across the state to determine their largest challenges.
Sitting here in Cheeseman Park, a picture of what it is to be trans here is very different than it is on the western slope and the eastern plains. And the further away you get from the urban core, the more issues people face in terms of access, safety, mobility, and opportunity.
Those survey results are expected to help guide a bill at the Capitol in next year's legislative session. A branch of the state Supreme Court says it needs more time to decide if a Republican district attorney should lose her law license and therefore her job for misconduct. DA Linda Stanley was supposed to find out tomorrow. In 2021, Stanley brought charges against Barry Morphew, who was charged with killing his missing wife, Suzanne Morphew. This is in the Salida area, Chaffee County. Stanley dropped those charges just days before the trial was supposed to start. Court filings accused her of misconduct for speaking inappropriately to a podcast about that case, showing up late for court repeatedly, and launching a secret investigation into the judge because she didn't like his rulings. A panel made up of a judge, an attorney, and a regular citizen will decide if Stanley should be disbarred, censured, or acquitted. There's no deadline for their decision at this point. If DA Stanley is disbarred, she can no longer serve as district attorney. So he went from being a convicted felon to being vice president of Applebee's. Then he decided to walk away from the corporate world for a new project in Colorado. Our Evan Krugel stopped by for a cup of coffee.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Opening a new business
I'm good.
requires a lot of energy.
That's true.
So it's a good thing Dan Clem has access to a bunch of it.
Right now I'm drinking about 5 of these a day, which is probably a problem, and then a couple of Red Bulls.
Caffeine that's helping drive his latest business venture, a coffee shop with a nod to Dan's troubled past.
Left home very young for about 10 years, was in and out of incarceration in different places in California. And then really my first son, Damien, was born when I was in prison in Vacaville Penitentiary, and that was really the beginning of me turning my life around.
After serving time for gun possession and car theft,
Yeah, over here.
Dan was able to find success in corporate restaurants.
My background started after being in prison. I went to work for Applebee's restaurants, ended up being a vice president of operations for them. I went to work for Rock Bottom Brewery as brand vice president. I was CEO of Illegal Pete's, and I was CEO of Chiba Hut.
But Dan says the corporate lifestyle wasn't for him, so he quit it all to try something new.
This is a fantastic roast, though. Super smooth.
At Convict Coffee, employees share the profits.
Right on, Brandon. Thanks.
And Dan is hoping he can help other former convicts open their own Convict Coffees.
And then they're motivated. They have skin in the game. They feel like they want to take care of the customer on a different level. And, ultimately, to me, if I end up being very successful and doing well and my employees are struggling, I don't feel like that's a success.
hoping to create change, one cup of coffee
Yeah, you're welcome.
at a time.
Right on. Thanks. Take care. Stay busy.
Now, the coffee shop also sells food and art created by people currently in prison and by people trying to make it after being released from prison. Dan is hoping to open 2 more shops. Again, those would be run by formerly incarcerated people in the next year. Kyle?
It's interesting to hear Dan's perspective when he says that if he is succeeding as the owner, right, the corporate side of it, but his employees are not succeeding, that's not a success in his eyes.
Yeah, and he left jobs where he was making a lot of money, working 35 hours a week with assistants, doing everything, to this lifestyle. And he says at the end of the day, he felt like he really needed that drive and to make the community a better place and to help those who have been in his position.
Evan Krugel, thank you. The plan to reshape the city around Ball Arena moves a step closer to really happening.
I had multiple bees flying in front of my face. I felt them kind of crawling up the backs of my pant legs.
And he loves it. Wants other people to love it too. That's next. Seems like Colorado's been having this fight every year with the IRS lately, whether the federal government can take a cut from our Tabor refunds. In a letter now, every member of the state's congressional delegation, R's and D's, have all asked the IRS to stick with the approach that has been the policy for more than 3 decades. They're worried the IRS might treat the refunds as taxable income. It almost happened last year, but the state legislature tweaked the system to distribute Tabor refunds earlier in the year to comply with IRS guidance on what's considered taxable versus not. As of now, people who file their taxes individually will get $800 back, joint filers $1,500. Major redevelopment of the area around Ball Arena is a step closer to becoming a reality. The Ball Arena Vision Plan moved through a Denver City Council committee this week. It would redevelop 55 acres of parking lots surrounding the arena to add bike lanes, townhouses, apartments, more than 1,000 affordable housing units as they describe them. They also want to build bridges to cross the light rail lines in the area so that people can walk from Ball Arena to what will eventually be a development known as the River Mile. That project is expected to take years to complete. The goal is to have a public hearing on that redevelopment project in October. We'll keep you updated. So there's now a bit more public land for everybody to explore in the foothills west of Colorado Springs. The U.S. Forest Service is getting a hold of nearly 130 acres of what was private property. It's a lot of meadows with mountain views. It's being called the Wagon Tongue property. It's just south of Lake George between the Florissant Fossil Beds National Monument and 11 Mile Reservoir. This happens as the Forest Service focuses a lot more on controlled burns and on timber cutting in vulnerable areas that are next to large population centers. The Conservation Fund purchased that property earlier this year.
Beautiful afternoon, bright blue skies and sunshine, only a few clouds drifting off the foothills today instead of the scattered storms, the severe weather we've been tracking for the last few days. Winds are picking up out of the west, but downsloping winds should keep us mild and dry. Couple of isolated showers over the northern mountains and foothills. Not expecting to see much development from these storms as they track from the west to east tonight. As a matter of fact, the severe weather threat is well east of not just Denver, but Colorado today. Tonight we'll have an isolated foothill storm. Denver, I think, stays dry with some passing clouds. It's interesting, though, overnight, we're watching a little cell that's going to develop out around Lyman and move toward the Burlington area very quickly, maybe between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. Otherwise, we're off and running to sunshine and 90s for the next few days. Temperatures in the 80s now, dropping into the 70s after sunset. And we've got a warm weather trend that'll see temperatures in record territory heading into the weekend. We're dry Friday and Saturday. Storms are back in the forecast late Sunday and Monday, but temperatures trend in the 90s and above average right through the middle part of next week.
It kind of looks like Denver just gave up. But no, this is the actual plan for some medians around the city. It's an all-natural approach. That's next. If you want to drive the Mount Sky Road to the summit, the old Mount Evans Road, got to get after it because it's about to close for a year. Starting September 3rd, construction will shut down Mount Blue Sky Highway until Memorial Day weekend 2026. You'll only be able to get to the summit during those times from some hiking trails. Of course, it's the name change. Remember, Mount Blue Sky, last year, U.S. Board of Geographic Names voted to change the name, which was originally for Governor John Evans. Turns out he wasn't a super dude. He authorized the Sand Creek Massacre. Denver's Parks and Rec Department says people have been complaining about the medians along Quebec, saying that they're ugly, overrun with weeds. And Parks and Rec is like, we want them to look that way. It's a project to bring in native plants, hopefully saving the city millions of gallons of water.
Just standing in the middle of it, you can hear all of the different types of pollinators and stuff around you. Say there's probably at least 7 or 8 different bee, fly, and wasp species that I can see just on these 4 different plants right here. My name is Ian Schellinger-Brokaw, Associate Urban Ecologer with Denver Parks and Recreation. And right now we're standing on one of the project sites that I'm managing here for Denver Parks and Recreation. Previously, this location was primarily all Kentucky bluegrass, so those 10 acres were completely covered by just one plant species. This project was really geared towards trying to take that landscape and convert it into a landscape that's a little bit more representative of the type of ecosystems we have here in Colorado. There's been some comments kind of to the tune of like, oh, it looks like it's not necessarily getting maintained or the city has just forgotten about it. That's actually kind of the opposite. There's a lot more attention going on to this site right now on the city side than has happened in the past. Yes, it definitely looks very, very different. It's going to continue to look different, and that difference is actually going to take a shift from year to year. Wildness isn't unmanicured, wildness isn't unmanaged. If anything, this site is more managed than it has been in the past, but it's managed in a way to make us feel wild.
Bees are all about it. So the city says, like my occasional beard, it's going to look kind of nasty as it grows in, but the median should be well established and a lot prettier with those native plants in a few years' time. We are back here with your feedback next. She's laughing at me for my beard. That's not nice. The most Colorado thing we saw today is a very elusive local in their natural habitat. This settles it. Bigfoot is real. How else can you explain this picture, snapped by Aaliyah, of a Sasquatch giving a biker directions off I-70? She says she took it off the Georgetown Loop train during Sasquatch days. Biker happened to be there right in the same place at the same time. Biker almost kind of looks like the governor. I don't know, do you see that too? If you see something that says Colorado to you, email it our way, next at 9news.com. Feedback tonight from Shirley, who says, what a fabulous variety of stories today. Pure next. Keep it up. Thank you, Shirley. That's delightful. Not all the people love this show. A tweet that says, you might be my favorite local news person on the timeline after Phil Williams. Do you all know who Phil Williams is? He's a reporter in Nashville. Look him up. He's amazing. Javier says, you sold your soul and betrayed we the people, so we have given up on you. You mean nothing to us. Your reporting has become nothing more than trash. Javier, if you have a specific concern about one of my reports, write back and we can have a conversation about it. If you just want to be mad, go be mad somewhere else, because the rest of us got a pretty good thing going. We'll see you next time.